A two-seat pod lifts off a launch pad in Guangzhou. No pilot sits inside it, no joystick, no steering wheel, nothing a person would call a cockpit. A ground station nearby has already loaded the flight route, and the aircraft flies the entire trip on its own, straight up, forward, then back down. But unlike almost every flying car video you have seen online, this one is not a rendering or a funding pitch. It is a certified aircraft, and passengers are already climbing into it. So what does the ride actually look like? Walk up to the EH216-S, and the first thing that stands out is what's missing. There's no windshield with a pilot behind it, no rearview mirror, no panel of switches. The cabin is a single sealed pod built for two people, wrapped in a carbon fiber composite shell with a wide curved canopy that gives both seats a clear view in almost every direction. You climb in through a pair of gull-wing doors that lift up and out of the way, closer to a supercar than an aircraft. Underneath the pod, 8 arms fold out, each carrying 2 rotors, 16 in total. That number matters more than it sounds. Every rotor runs on its own motor and its own power feed, so if one fails mid-flight, the other 15 can still bring the aircraft down safely. It's the same logic multi-engine planes use, just scaled down and automated. There's no yoke inside the cabin, no pedals, no stick of any kind. The whole aircraft measures about 5.6 meters long and wide, and stands roughly 1.7 meters tall, small enough for a rooftop pad, but wide enough that the cabin never feels cramped for 2 people. The only interface passengers actually touch is a screen used to book the flight, days or minutes before boarding. Once you're seated, the aircraft is the one flying it, not you. Every other vehicle you've ever ridden in gave somebody, a driver, a pilot, a conductor, some form of control. This one doesn't, by design. Before boarding, passengers go through a quick identity check and a weigh-in. Then a short safety briefing plays on a screen inside the cabin, covering what to expect and what to do if anything goes wrong. Once the doors close, the flight plan is already sitting on the aircraft's onboard computer, uploaded from EHang's ground command center using a pre-mapped route built around the day's weather and traffic in the airspace. Takeoff is vertical, straight up off the pad, no runway, no taxiing. The aircraft reads its own position through GNSS receivers tuned to multiple satellite systems, backed up by cameras and radar that watch for obstacles the satellites can't see. From there, it shifts into forward flight, cruising at around 100 kilometers per hour with a top speed of 130, and climbing as high as 3,000 meters when the route calls for it. The command center watches the entire flight in real time, tracking battery level, altitude, speed, and the health of every rotor, and it can step in if the automated system ever calls for help. Landing works the same way in reverse. The aircraft slows, descends, and sets down on a marked pad using its fixed landing gear, all without a hand touching a control. The whole trip typically runs somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes depending on the route. For a passenger, the strangest part of the ride isn't the flying itself, it's the empty space where a pilot should be. Strip away the design and the automation, and the raw numbers explain why this aircraft is built for short hops, not cross-country trips. The EH216-S carries a payload of up to 220 kilograms, enough for 2 adult passengers and a bit of luggage. A full charge gives it a range of about 35 kilometers, roughly 22 miles, and a flight time of around 21 minutes before it needs to land and recharge, which takes about 2 hours. That spec sheet fits point-to-point hops, a sightseeing loop over a lake, or a short transfer between 2 fixed pads, not a daily commute across town. Every part of the aircraft leans toward redundancy over range, not speed. 16 independent motors, a dual battery setup, and a flight control system with its own built-in backups, all feeding data back to that ground command center in real time. If one component's health readings drop, a fail-safe system reroutes the flight automatically and lands the aircraft at the nearest safe pad. On paper, it reads like a machine built by engineers who assumed something would eventually go wrong and designed every layer underneath that assumption. None of this would matter if the EH216-S were still a prototype. It isn't. On October 13, 2023, it became the first aircraft of its kind anywhere in the world to receive a type certificate, the credential confirming an aircraft's design meets a National Aviation Authority's safety standards issued by China's Civil Aviation Administration, the CAASI. If a Chinese manufacturer building the world's first certified flying taxi surprises you, hit subscribe. This channel tracks the Chinese-made appliances and machines quietly outpacing what's sitting in Western homes and driveways right now. That process took years. EHang first applied for it in January 2021, and getting there meant thousands of hours of laboratory, ground, and flight testing across battery systems, software, structural strength, and data links, all under CAAC inspection. On top of more than 39,000 demo and trial flights, the aircraft had already logged across 14 countries before the certificate was ever issued. 2 months later, in December 2023, the aircraft added a standard airworthiness certificate, confirming the actual production units, not just the design on paper, met those same standards. A production certificate followed, clearing the aircraft for mass manufacturing rather than one-off builds. By March 2025, EHang's operating partners in Guangzhou and Hefei had secured the first air operator certificates ever issued for a pilotless human-carrying aircraft, the paperwork that actually lets a company sell tickets. That's 4 separate regulatory hurdles, each one usually enough to sink a new aircraft program on its own, cleared in sequence over about 4 years. Most flying car projects still online today have not cleared a single one of those 4 hurdles. This aircraft already has, one after another, which is the entire reason a stranger can walk up and buy a seat. The numbers back up the certifications. EHang has delivered more than 650 EH216 series aircraft cumulatively through the end of 2025, according to the company's own quarterly filings, climbing from 52 units in 2023 to 216 in 2024, and 215 more in 2025 alone. Those aren't pre-orders sitting on a spreadsheet. Those are actual aircraft that left the factory floor and went to paying customers, mostly local tourism operators, spread across dozens of Chinese cities. In March 2026, ticketed flights officially opened to the public at 2 sites, EHang, Future City in Guangzhou's Huangpu district, and Luogang Central Park in Hefei. Right now, those routes are sightseeing loops, not point-to-point commuting between 2 arbitrary addresses. EHang is still working with the CAAC to open that kind of flexible routing, so calling this a replacement for tomorrow's commute is still ahead of where the technology stands today. But the sightseeing flights that do exist are real, and passengers have already described what riding one is actually like. One rider who flew out of the Guangzhou test site this year described a 5-minute loop along a preset route, after an identity check, a weigh-in, and a safety briefing that played on a screen before boarding. The aircraft has no air conditioning, so staff hand out a cooling spray and a small fan before the doors close. A full commercial ride runs close to 10 minutes and costs around $40, cheaper than a lot of theme park rides for a view no theme park can match. Meanwhile, the Western companies chasing the same idea, Joby, Archer, Volocopter, are still flying with pilots on board while they wait on their own certifications. None of them have carried a single paying passenger yet. So is this really the thing that finally makes cars obsolete? Not yet, and not for tomorrow's commute. A 35-kilometer range and a 21-minute flight time won't replace a highway system anytime soon, but that's not really the comparison worth making. The real comparison is between one country that spent 4 years turning a drone-sized flying pod into a certified ticketed aircraft carrying real strangers over real cities, and everyone else still running pilot-in-the-loop test flights, waiting on the same paperwork EHang already has. Cars aren't obsolete yet. But the idea that flying taxis are a decade away, a concept video, a funding pitch waiting on investors, that part is already out of date. Somewhere over Guangzhou right now, a small pod with no pilot, no joystick, and no steering wheel is proving that point, one sightseeing loop at a time.